Okay, folks. Let's get ourselves settled back down again. Can go and do some light flipping, or is Jane Dawson people out of the? Okay. Modesty. Okay. Okay. Looks like we're starting to. Let's call ourselves back to order, or at least as much order as we ever have. Um, we're going to do a brief interlude before we get into our open data. Marcia is not going to be able to join us for this afternoon, and so we're going to give her about 5 minutes to present on the story map that she has submitted in to us on the habitat restoration in the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcia Scavone, and I am going to talk to you about my journal story map describing restoration habitats in Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. Because of the short time, I will be highlighting some of the restoration sites that will be included. Yeah, so this map that this map is the main map that is available in Atlas, and it shows the delta habitat restoration areas that are highlighted in green. So this map was made based on the early efforts of the Department of Water Resources, the cow-fed ecosystem restoration programs, the Natural Resources Project Inventory, the Wildlife Conservation Board, and the other private sector programs. So let's now have some example of restoration projects. Okay, this is Caches Lulu. This is Caches Lulu in the northwest corner of the delta, and it's linked to the Yolo bypass restoration area. So it includes the delta smelt, habitats of the delta smelt and the native species. The next is Liberty Island. Liberty Island is a former agricultural island that was flooded in 1998. And it was designed, was designated an ecological reserve by the Fish and Game Commission. And it contains wetland and tidal marsh habitats, supporting several endangered fish species, waterfowl, and mammals. The next one, you can have the picture here. Oops. The next one is the Prospect Island. Prospect Island is located near Liberty Island and lies between Sacramento Deepwater Ship Channel and the Minor Slough. DWR plans to restore to freshwater tidal habitat. So the next one is Marsh. Sunsu Marsh was located in the West Delta, and it's the largest brackish marsh on the west coast of North America. And it provides it provides spawning and rearing habitats for migratory fish and wildlife. And finally, Yolo Bypass, that that's located near the city of Sacramento and is a part of the Central Valley Flood Control Project. It's used for agriculture and waterfowl habitats. When seasonally flooded, it becomes a large floodplain habitat for migratory fish and bird species. So, in conclusion, in conclusion, there are some of the restoration sites that we select to show you. There are many more restoration sites. And we need others to provide additional information to update the map and ensure that its its usefulness and accuracy. So we are requesting that you send your project information to the Department of Water Resources, and that is my email. And I will be looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much for your interest.
It's just on the technical side, it's the map general builder. Have any problems with pictures? Still working our way through some technical challenges with the web feed. So we're going to move now into a panel session, though it might be more appropriately put as sort of short presentations. We've got a fair number of folks crammed in here pretty tight. We'll try to do questions at the end, but we're going to be hit or miss on whether we can get people out with a reasonable amount of time to get out, get lunch, and actually get back. So we're going to be playing a little bit on a wire here. We're going to make a little bit of an order change. We on consultation with some of the folks, we decided we'd like to put David Harris as our first speakers to give an overview of CNRA's open data efforts, and then we'll move into our presenters from OpenGov, the folks from Green Info Network, and then through a few of the departments to give brief outlines of their efforts to date. So if I could call our presenters up, we'll let, I guess, David Harris, it looks like you have a little bit of a slide deck that we can get going. Oh. So I'm going to hold myself for last since I know we're tight on time. So David?
Yeah, we're going to run through this pretty fast. My name is David Harris. I'm with the Natural Resources Agency's Data Center. It's a tremendous pleasure for me to get to be here for a couple of reasons. So many friends here, people I've had the opportunity to work with on a lot of great projects. I've been in a unique position to see a lot of different geospatial and other information or decision support system projects across the Natural Resources Agency, and this event is wonderful for getting people to get some insight into the amazing work that's being done here. I'm fortunate to get to see that a lot, and so it's great to be with old friends again. But it's also amazing to be here in this room with people that have so much expertise related to providing the information that's really necessary to do great policy formation. Policy gets decided with or without great data, and it always works a lot better if we've got the facts on the ground, right? And this is a new idea, but it's also a really old idea. Our to set a little context, our nation's founders talked about creating a deliberative democracy, right? And how do you do that if you don't have the facts on the ground? So this group has the ability to have an impact on that more than many others. And so it's great to be able to be with you guys and recognize that. So the Natural Resources Agency is setting up an open data platform, and we're saying platform because it's a set of integrated services. It's not just another portal. And it's also structuring the responsibilities so that it's a lot more appropriate, we think, to the places that are in the best position to do each component of the work that we've got to do together. So our driving objectives are to improve transparency, because government credibility is really important. Public confidence is really essential for a lot of what we want to get done, and transparency is hugely supportive of that. We want to help out with making it easier to follow open government data directives. Making data immediately accessible is really crucial, and as we know in doing GIS projects, what percentage of the project is just getting the data together and being able to get it from our partners efficiently and in a form that's easily consumable. So we want to lower that cost of all of our projects and increase our speed for getting to decisions. One of the, there are a lot of data portals that are around now, and one of the challenges is that it's difficult to know where to go to get what you want. And so a lot of us are experiencing what we're calling portal fatigue. There's a lot of different sites, and it's hard to know where to go. And so the fundamental design of this platform recognizes that the expertise on both the problem and the available data are out at the edge of the organization. And this platform is designed to empower folks at the edge of the organization and being able to use whatever tools out of a toolbox they need to answer their questions best. It also recognizes that we already have in government a structure set up to help us coordinate across themes, and that's agencies. And so by consolidating this access to this information through federation, pulling in data that's already out there, and other portals that will continue to exist, but making it visible in one spot where people can plumb across the silos efficiently, it gives us the best of both worlds. It lets us integrate and coordinate, but also to empower that front edge where the real action is. So the key architectural principles of the project are, we realize that one size doesn't fit all. We need to be able to have an adaptable tool set that can meet the challenges of each program. So it's really program-centric first. An important part of that is to support visualization as well. That's where the real value gets provided. And so that's not just GIS visualization, it also includes charts, graphs, dashboards, and all the other ways that we can quickly communicate with folks. We want it to be as user-friendly and accessible as possible. One of the things that's exciting to me about the platform is that we've made it a lot easier for CNRA staff to access. We've been able to implement ADFS authentication that can allow people who already have email credentials within CNRA to be able to self-deploy onto the site, stand up a profile in way under a minute. One of the testers told me it was faster than installing an iPhone app. And we want to provide that ease of use and accessibility across the user experience in this platform. The system supports multiple data types. It supports geospatial data, but it also supports tabular very well. And we have a lot of different kinds of data we need to consume, and it's completely agnostic on the type of data people are using. However, we recognize that geospatial data is really strategic for natural resources, and because we're using an open source platform that can be customized according to our business needs, we've been able to make some really interesting enhancements, and hopefully you'll be able to hear about that in a couple of minutes here. So because we're using open standards, it helps us be more interoperable, and we can receive data that's already being collected in other places and provide a single point of discovery. So it's a pretty sophisticated technical platform, but it boils down to three major architectural components. To do great BI, you need to be able to find stuff, you need to be able to make it work together, and you need to be able to visualize it. And so there's a value chain as you go through each of those stages, and so the fundamental functional architecture provides a component for each of those. And you'll get to hear about discoverability, the finding part with CCAN from Alex. Yeah. The interoperability, there's multiple tool options, but we're taking care of that in the platform. And then there's also visualization. There'll be a presentation on Tableau, for instance. And of course, we all have our existing tools. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. And so I'm going to pass this back to Nate again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'd like to introduce Alex Fordyce from OpenGov. He's the data services manager. We're going to be giving our guests from outside a little bit more time than we're giving our own internal folks. So we'll be giving them about 20 minutes or so. But just bear in mind, I'm going to be running the clock and keeping track of things pretty hard. So welcome and thank you.
Okay, talk closer to the mic. Great, will do. Let's see here. My presentation. Great. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for having me. Again, David, thanks for kicking things off here. And Nate, thank you. Again, my name's Alex Fordyce. I'm a data services architect at OpenGov. I focus on the open data platform, and in that, I lead the deployment here at CNRA. So I've been involved with Tim Garza and David Harris and folks from the DWR for the last few months, the last 8 months, implementing this large open data project. It's very exciting for me. Prior to OpenGov, I was a GIS application developer, software developer, so happy GIS Day, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I feel the geospatial love in the room. So let's see. So just want to quickly go over an agenda, just a quick overview about OpenGov in case no one in the room knows who we are or what we're about. And then a little bit about the CNRA objectives, although David really hit those spot on. Then I'll go into the open data platform itself, a little bit more of the general functionality of it, get into some of the geospatial capabilities, and then if we have time, I'll show some product, and if the demo gods are smiling favorably right now. So again, OpenGov, we're a Silicon Valley company based in the Bay Area, although we have offices also in DC and New York. We have some pretty large. We have some large customers. CNRA is one of our flagship customers. We're really proud of this relationship. We have other large relationships as well. We have about 1,600 customers. We've been around for about 6 years. We got into helping government and government IT by promoting and really having a mission about data transparency with the government. So that's a little bit about our mission. Most people I work with are very mission driven in terms of helping government, making government more efficient, helping bring technology tools to help government make better data decisions, and also help the public get access to that information. So that's what we're about. Here's kind of our board of directors. Zach Bookman, kind of on top from the left. Second from the left is someone you might have heard about. He's in the papers. The other folks on the board are pretty well known. We're backed by some pretty serious folks in the technology world. We're proud of that. Also, a board of advisors has a lot of people in government that are affiliated with our company and cheering us on, really. And really, it's an exciting place because of projects like I'm about to talk about, which is open data. So generally speaking, here's our technology stack. We recognize there's all sorts of different data silos, data systems within the government organization. This might be water resources, GIS, a big part of that, IT management, energy, oceans, what have you. They all are represented in this room. Very exciting room to be in. And we try to pipe that data to our data pipeline, right? This exists, our whole infrastructure exists in AWS. So we have the advantage of of leveraging some amazing cutting edge tools. But basically the first step is building data pipelines into our data platform in the cloud. Then we have these pillars of applications. You could call them BI. We're not a Tableau, but this is all about planning, using your data once it's in the cloud to plan, to operate, communicate. For the purpose of this talk here, we're going to focus only on open data. That's all way far on the right there. That's what this project's involved in. And so yeah, but I wanted to show you kind of the landscape of product and type of technologies that we deal with. So for CNRA, the open data objectives, as David was saying, we want to enhance data sharing across the agency. We want to facilitate the search and use of high quality data internally onto one platform. Yes, we want to get this data out to the public, but we've found the most successful open data programs work is if there's high quality data curated internally first and shared, then that's going to predict the success of a project. Because if we're not using the data internally and don't find it useful, then we can't expect the public to really to use that either. So we find that we really want to focus on internal data sharing. Again, part of our technology is open source. Tim Garza and David Harris and a few others felt that was really a very important aspect of the decision to use our technology. This allows us to avoid the risks of closed systems and technical debt, and the overall goal would be to make data useful to everyone. I mean, in my personal experience with large IT departments and projects, technical diversity is really important in an IT department. And we're in no way trying to replace ESRI or replace Tableau. We just simply want to integrate those data systems into your workflows and allow a central location for people to get access to that data. So before I get into the slide, so every time that you put up like a structured data set, like a CSV, and you add that to the platform, an automatic API is generated. So the stack of our platform, the default state is PostgreSQL, and then some Python as the business logic, and then on the front end we use JavaScript and front end web technologies basically. But the advantage of the platform itself is when you upload a data set, like a structured data set that's organized, you immediately have access to an API. And so that can be brought into Tableau and queried and looked at, and then it also can be brought in. You can also have third-party developers develop applications using the API. So we found there's immediate advantages right there. So again, our open data platform, it's based on CCAN, which is an open data management software that's open source. So why OpenGov? Well, here's some reasons that we think that CCAN is good and a great technology, and kind of what OpenGov brings to the table. This has been a tested platform by data.gov. We host everything in Amazon Cloud, so that's something that we can really take advantage of as a company and develop services around that. And then there's, as with most, or at least with this open source effort, there's hundreds of extensions that have been developed by developers over the years. So one example in terms of GIS functionality is like an ArcGIS server or feature service plugin that allows you to install that on our platform, which is what we've done for CNRA, and then immediately tap into a feature service or a map service REST endpoint. So you can view that data. You can't do all that much spatial analysis, but on the platform, at least you can have a reference to that endpoint without bringing that data into the platform. So we're not hosting that data, right? We're literally just referencing, and you can visualize that data. So I hope to show that to you. Let's see, we've got a large ecosystem of developers and customers using CCAN. OpenGov sits on the CCAN steering committee, so our development team helps make decisions around product direction. And so as such, CNRA's input to what features should come out and what kind of technologies that we should implement in, or libraries we should implement with, directly are affecting the product line on the open source side of things. So we're also a gold member of the CCAN Association, and OpenGov has the most CCAN implementations in the United States. So we're building a strong track record of these implementations. Here's a bit about the technology architecture. It's very modularized. It's a modern framework. It's a modern architecture. And so it's an MVC model at that. And one of the advantages is for these extensions, which I'll speak about, really is just functionality, additional functionality. But it's done in a modular way, so we don't have to touch the core code. So if there's new features that are developed over time, then we're not creating technical debt by touching the main core code of the CCAN source code. We're developing these extensions, they're usually developed in Python, and we can plug and play them. We can enable them and then make them not available. So just want to tell you that's a little bit about the architecture. A little bit about security and data protection. We use a combination. Again, it's up in Amazon Cloud, so we can crank down on security as much as we want using those services. That's a really exciting platform to be on. But through a combination of user management, monitoring, and encryption, and penetration testing, we've developed a very secure platform for those methods. Also, we log activities through the normal web logs, and can monitor those logs as necessary. And again, we followed the security practices of AWS. And we also review our security platform posture regularly every quarter. Okay, and so for some of the geospatial capabilities, so GeoJSON, I heard some people talking about that earlier. So that's natively allowed to be viewed in the platform. So that's kind of the open source version of the shapefile, if you will. It's a flat file, so there are some limitations that go on with GeoJSON, as probably everyone knows. The larger files of GeoJSON may have some proxy issues if there's too many entities trying to be passed through web server or gateway. So there are some issues around that, but generally speaking, GeoJSON is a fine file format to transfer, or at least to view and have an initial basic understanding about some geometry that you're interested in, or that's part of the data set. Again, I mentioned there's been a an ArcGIS server extension built for CCAN, and this allows us to natively display ArcGIS map services and feature services. And the background map is using Leaflet, so it displays that geometry around that. We also are very involved with spatial harvesting. So this is setting up what we call a harvester in CCAN that basically can go talk to an open data site. Typically, the easiest is data.json. These are files, metadata files that are created by a platform like ArcGIS Open Data. If we point to that, we can then bring in all of those data sets or the metadata of those data sets, and so then it's now searchable and usable in our system. Again, we're not bringing down the data, but we're allowing that data to be searchable. So we use DCAT and then CSW as well. And then WAF, Web Accessible Folder. DCAT seems to be, in my experience, in the recent year or two, the easiest endpoint to federate against, but it gives you the least amount of control. So you kind of get all or nothing. If you point to this endpoint, all of this data kind of comes down. You got to be really careful. If you point to data.gov or other large open data sites, you need to make sure that your instance, your platform is prepared to handle that load. Whereas if you have a CSW server, which is a little bit more tricky to set up, you can actually add query filters to that endpoint. So I'm only interested in certain types of data within an open data system. You can kind of filter for that. Then when you set up the harvester, you can set it to refresh itself at a frequency. So that's we're pulling in data. We're pulling in more data, weekly, daily, monthly, whatever. Again, another geospatial capability within the open data platform is you can embed Esri maps, if you will, or CartoDB maps just directly into the platform using an iframe. So that's one way that we've been able to add more geospatial functionality within the platform itself. A couple other cool extensions that I've found is there's an actual CCAN QGIS extension. I know we're heavy on the ESRI here, but just want to let you know that there's QGIS. There's an extension you can install that will point to a CCAN open data portal and then allow you to look at all the data sets in that and bring them into your QGIS client. And then I found a CCAN GeoServer extension. I haven't used that one, but that seems pretty interesting. That would be publishing from CCAN out to GeoServer, which is a pretty interesting combination if you're using open open source technologies. I personally have used a lot of GeoServer, so yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at that extension as well. So here's some general CCAN related geospatial developments. There's Teria.io, which is an open source geospatial catalog built by the Australian government. And this works directly with CCAN. So that's a mapping application, mapping framework that talks directly to CCAN. Data.gov harvests spatial data from a variety of different geospatial vendors and formats. USGS is also heavily involved with geospatial information with CCAN. Then I found a couple others called geoplatform.gov and European Union. They also have great examples of how you integrate CCAN with geospatial information. And then so what has OpenGov contributed to this geospatial efforts with CCAN? We added a better GIS online harvester. So every time that you harvest data, your metadata is typically overwritten on a system that to the destination. But what if you're in your open data portal, you have a harvest and you change some of the metadata and you don't want that overwritten because now the data's had some value being added to it. So we've made some settings and changes to this harvester that allows you not to lose any of the changes that you've made to your metadata when a reharvest occurs. And then we built this ArcGIS server extension with our partner AppGeo in Boston. This was originally for the city of Boston. And then right now we're currently experimenting with embedding CartoDB's spatial database with ours. So right now, Carto's in the cloud, we're in the cloud. If you want to have some sort of CartoDB sharing of data, you'd have to really develop an ETL process. So the source from the data system would actually have to output to our CCAN instance first, or at the same time, multi-threaded approach to CCAN and Carto to have the data sync occur. What we're in talks with Carto about, which is pretty exciting, is actually having them reroute their mapping technology to talk to the CCAN instance directly. So that's something that we're doing some R&D on. We're pretty excited about it. And then also, we're integrating with third-party tools like QGIS, like Tableau. I'm excited to see the Tableau presentation later. So we have an OData connector out, so as part of an API for any data source. So that's kind of how you would set that up. And then one of the products that we're, or one of the new features we're coming up with right now in the system is creating new resources on the platform using SQL or stored queries. So in that you could use joins, multiple joins within the system to create a new resource, and then to create that new resource, you would add SQL, and then it would create a materialized view behind the scenes on the platform, so you could utilize that for more analysis. So, do I have time to show, or 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Okay, I'll show quickly just what the platform looks like. How about that? Because this will start getting rolled out, I think, in the next month or two. At least internally first, and then after the new year to the public. So great. So here's it's the URL is SSL based, obviously data.cnra.ca.gov. There's this here's kind of the overall UI. We've got the hero banner, this concept of topics. And then some showcases, which are really just links out to third-party applications that utilize data within the system. Or they could be reports. It's really up to you. There's no set rule of how to use showcases. We just typically say these are applications that are related to the data sets that are being used and searchable within the system. And then the system shows you the popular data sets and new and recent data sets. So there's a concept of data and organizations and topics. I'll just go quickly into the data sets. You click in the data sets, you can search for data sets. There's 78 on the system. I can look for wells. Now I end up with 13. I can also search for just data sets within around Sacramento. So here's a spatial search on that. And we'd end up with two types of data sets. So there's kind of the geospatial filtering lab with that. And then you can kind of do faceting search. You can figure out, or you can select on and off different filters within the data sets. There's a concept of organizations. So CNRA is the high level instance here. And then underneath that, you would have California Fish and Wildlife, and then Energy Commission, Ocean Protection. So each department would represent another subgroup within the organization. And then we have an idea about topics, which allows you to search across departments by topic of the platform. And that's all I have time for. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Alex. I look forward to playing with it a bit more in the future and getting more of our stuff tied in directly to it. Next, we have Mayanna Vogue, and from Green Info Network, accompanied by Dan Rademacher. So it looks like Mayanna, you're going to be the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I can make it pretty quick, actually. So can I get a show of hands first? Who's heard of CPAD, the California Protected Areas Database? Great. Okay, I can skip some of the what is it parts. And who's heard of CCED, the California Conservation Easement Database? Mostly the same. Okay, good. Great. First, about us. My name is Mayanna Vogue. I'm Associate Director at Green Info Network. I've been managing CPAD for the last couple of years. Green Info is a nonprofit consultant group. We make maps and visualize data in the public interest. So we work with public agencies and other nonprofits. And CPAD has been an important project of ours for over 10 years. And for this crowd in particular, I added, we're also on Instagram. So we share a lot of insider tips on cartography if you're interested. That's at Green Info Network. So what's in CPAD? Very briefly, it's a GIS database, shapefile format of all the parks and open space, fee-owned lands, parks and open space in California. Everything from large BLM lands, national parks, down to your neighborhood pocket park. So depending on who you ask, CPAD started 20 plus years ago. Really, in a way, it started as a tabular list of data in the 80s, maintained by the Greenbelt Alliance. When Green Info started, we started digitizing that data in the mid-90s. And it started because we had this need of a regional analysis of public open space lands. You can't just look at a single agency, you need to look at a multi-agency environment. And eventually, over time, and with funding from many groups present here and foundations, we were able to publish a statewide database in 2008. And 16 releases later, we released 2017A in August this year. And a big part of our success, I would say, in maintaining public data over 10 years is a long time span in GIS data world, right? Part of our success is this concept of eating your own dog food, which is a good thing. It doesn't sound appetizing, but have you guys heard of this, dog fooding, eating your own dog food? I only just heard about it last month, but it turns out we've been practicing it for 10 years. And it's a pretty simple concept of if you're developing a product of any kind, it's more popular in the software development world, but be it software or data, you have to publish your data and also use it. And you should use it as it's published. So not a secret internal version with extra fields that you don't share with the public, but you should use the product that you publish, and that will lead to improvements in that product. And if you look at our projects and you search for CPAD on our website, you'll find a couple dozen examples. And there are more smaller ones too throughout the course of the year that we work on. And I have a couple examples that I think will illustrate the benefit of dog fooding for all of us current and future open data sharers. You may have heard of Proposition A in Los Angeles County last year, a huge park bond that passed in fall 2016. We were part of an inventory project the previous year evaluating park facilities and boundary data for the whole county. And CPAD was the cornerstone of that effort. So we worked with, I think, every incorporated city within Los Angeles County and a number of other agencies. And as a result, all of them had their eyes on CPAD and gave us feedback on the data. So we had 3,000 new edits in the data set because of that and 700 new units. And then we published the data to the public. So that was a project of ours where we needed to improve the data for the services we were hired for, and then we shared the improvements for free with the public. And a little bit more technical, I think this crowd can appreciate. Recently, we needed to automate the assignment of designations and gap codes in CPAD because CPAD is fed into PAD-US. Who's heard of PAD-US? It's the national version, basically, Protected Areas Database of the United States. And they track gap codes, which briefly is a measurement of conservation planning within a unit or a park lands. So it's a huge task. We wanted to build a Python script to develop it. And the way we developed it were based on agency names and park names. And agency names we'd standardized years ago. You won't find NPS and National Park Service. We've standardized all of those names within our database, and it's very reliable. Park names, not quite so much. So for instance, Skyline Ridge Open Space. This looks like a complete park name, right? It's actually a preserve. And that preserve keyword changed the outcome for gap status. It brought it to a 4 when it should have been a 3. And that's important for that measurement. So it was a really simple finding where we realized we weren't representing gap codes accurately across the state. And so because we maintained the data, we could shift our priorities and say, okay, we need to really look closely at accurate park names. And so for the next period, we focused on accurate park names, and we added dozens of new, more accurate park names. And a query like that I added for us GIS users. I'm sure you're familiar. So it was a simple iterative process, right, where we found our own data that we were sharing with people wasn't fulfilling our own needs, and so we improved it. And now, hopefully, when we share it, when we publish it outwards again, other people will benefit from that improved naming system. And the one key difference is that we are a nonprofit organization. So we've been thinking about what makes us different in terms of being a data publisher. On one hand, we're small and nimble, and we don't have a lot of staffing. On the other hand, nearly every GIS staff in our group has at one time or another edited CPAD. Funding is another issue where we have to go. We're reliant on funding for the data set. On the other hand, if one funding source goes away, we're free to go and find another one, which I think could probably be a limitation within a government environment. And the other is, a number of years ago, we were editing CPAD in the Esri SDE environment, and we found it wasn't living up to what we needed, so we just switched. And we manage the data in PostGIS and edit in QGIS. So anyone on staff is free to download, to their benefit or peril, any open source software they want. And we chose QGIS, and it's worked wonderfully. But I know there are stricter limitations in government settings, not for us. And then lastly, because we're a nonprofit and we don't represent any one agency or department, we're free to listen to or maybe politely decline any specific choices for the data set. So if someone wants a new field that we think wouldn't serve our users, we can say no. But we do listen closely to users, and we've found many benefits from listening to a wide variety. We try and keep CPAD open to as many users as possible.
Thank you, Mayana. Right. Matt Correa. Welcome, Matt Correa from the Department of Water Resources. I'm going to get out of the way and let you have time.
We'll try to make it quick so we have time for questions at the end. Hi, I'm Matt Correa from Statewide Integrated Water Management. We have been doing a pilot project on behalf of Sigma Sustainable Groundwater Management Act or program to look at hosting some of the time series data sets that you can currently access through the Water Data Library and making them accessible through the Open Data Platform. So first is to say David Harris and Alex and his team have both been terrific to work with. And maybe if I can get to... Perfect. Just to kind of give you a quick overview of how we've been using open data, some of the things we've been trying out, and then lastly, we'd love to have all of you kind of help us eat our own dog food and kind of test out some of the data sets and find ways we can improve the data sets that we're publishing. I'd never do these on the fly. This is just kind of we'll do a quick look. We have a overview, kind of a description of what's contained within the data set. And then we have a set of resources. And one of the challenges we run into is some of these data sets become quite large, particularly with our time series data sets that are collected, somewhere between an hourly to 15-minute time step, but the geospatial component that we can highlight would be our stations table. So this shows the lat and longitude of the well locations where we're monitoring groundwater levels. And then Alex had kind of referenced doing Carto embeds, and I was especially excited to hear about kind of the live connection with Carto would be terrific. But you can see kind of now back where our well is located. We click and get a little bit more information kind of about what's contained within the data set. So I think, hopefully that gives you a quick overview. If I come back to the head table, some of the other pieces we have been kind of working on are, one, how to organize the data sets, but then two, how to make them accessible. So some of these files become large. They're 4 to 10 gigabytes in size, which may be a bit large for the average data consumer. And so we're looking at building tools like kind of a data extractor. So you can put in the station or the county in which you're looking for data sets, and it'll give you an automated data download. And then automating our data set updates. So how do we get the data from the databases that we currently manage and automate the extraction, transformation, and loading onto open data? So I think with that, well, I guess the other piece I can say is, so some of the public-facing web map services that the department has, currently the GIS services group is working on automating the upload of those data sets, or at least the cataloging of those data sets onto the open data platform. So those should be there shortly. And really what I wanted to highlight was we would love to have kind of crowdsource improvement of our data sets. And so I just wanted to highlight how you can use, this one doesn't have it. I shouldn't have chosen that website, but ideally as this gets rolled out internally, if folks can spend a little bit of time, there's a data set that's of interest to you to go consume, download the data, play with it, and give us feedback on improvements that we can make. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. And last among our speakers, Steve Goldman from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Thanks, Nate. I don't have any slides. I'll probably be pretty quick. I have the enviable position of being last before lunch here, and all I can offer you there is skip the dog food at lunch. Keep that to the work time. So we've shared, at Fish and Wildlife, we've shared our GIS data for a long time, and I think a lot of us have. I mean, GIS data is expensive to create, and at least in government, we've been doing this sharing thing for a long time, but open data brings some additional elements to that. Such as ease of access and ease of use and findability and stuff like that. Just because you're posting your data on your department's website as a GIS file doesn't mean that it really meets that open data standard. If someone knows where to go find it, they can maybe get to it. If you've done a good job with your search indexing, then Google and others can find it, but often not. So where we're heading is moving towards using Esri's open data platform, because all of you that already have Esri organizational accounts have this open data platform available for free. It's available, if you put your data into ArcGIS Online, you can assign data into the open data platform, and you can choose which of your data that's in ArcGIS Online goes into that area. And so we've been working with David Harris and the CNRA folks to ensure that that data can be harvested, which I think we're good to go there. So anyone else can use that method as well. That way you're only publishing to one place. It then gets harvested to CNRA, which then gets harvested to data.ca.gov, and up the chain. So That's one thing we've worked on a lot in the past years, is trying to ensure we're not having to publish multiple places, because that gets really tedious. And so one thing that we're asked to possibly talk about is frictions with open data and getting to open data within your organizations. A lot of our data, we can make public without too much concern, but we do have frictions, and we run into folks or entities that we describe as data retentive. And I'll credit Lupo with that term, but it's a good one to use. It describes it well. And there are plenty of good reasons that people don't want to release their data. But the trick is starting to engage with those folks and really understanding what those areas of resistance are, and bringing to bear whether it's really valid or not, or easing that concern and being able to get to the open data solution. So some of the common ones that we hear are that we don't want people to misuse our data. Our data is so complicated, if we put it out there, it'll get misused. Okay, that's, I understand that concern, but, if we're government and we're developing data, the answer to that is really, well, describe your data well, make sure all the attributes are clear and the metadata is clear and the appropriate use are outlined in the metadata, and then put it out there. We can't control what happens to our data. There's no way for us to do that. Even the stuff that we don't have as much concern with, we have no idea what's going to happen with it. Our role is just to document how it was developed, what the appropriate uses are, maybe document inappropriate uses, get it out there for use. Most of these misuse scenarios don't end up actually happening. They're just concerns that people have that I think for the most part we can get past and get our data out there, so long as it's documented well. Another thing that we've heard, at least in our department, is that people worry about people making commercial use of their data or our data. And to me, that's really more of an argument for open data publishing, because if someone can make a commercial case to resell data that the government is making available for free, then we're really not doing a good job of presenting and making our data easily available and accessible. Because why would somebody pay for data that we're giving away for free? The only reason would be if they didn't know we were giving it away. So getting into these open data platforms and getting the data more widely accessible solves that problem. And then if someone can do some value add to the data and make money off of it, that's great. I mean, as government, that's what we should be promoting, is these economic opportunities for small business or whoever to make money off the data that the government is tasked with generating in the first place. I mean, they're paying for the data. If they can then use that data in some other way to make a business venture, why shouldn't they be able to do that? And so to address some of these issues, what we're doing is developing a data policy within our department. And policies aren't easy to develop, but it's really the way you have to go to be able to set that standard and set that bar for, all data shall be made available, shall be made public and published to the various platforms, unless there's a documented reason not to. And that changes it a little bit, whereas now it's people don't come forward with their data just because they have feelings about it and don't want to release it for various reasons. There is no policy that says they must, and until there is, then they don't have that guideline to follow. So we're moving that direction to get that policy in place, which we're almost done with, and then we'll have that bar to point towards and engage more in those conversations with folks on why they might not want to put their data out there and get those discussions going. That's it. Thanks.
Seems as though we've managed to make up just a little bit of time along here. I will, as we have just a minute or two, 4 minutes before I'm charged to get everybody out and on the way towards lunch, I will throw in my 30 seconds on the Department of Conservation. There are a great many parallels between where we are right now and Fish and Wildlife. We have maps.conservation.ca.gov, which we call doc maps, which is a single starting point for accessing all of our data. It's not a formal portal like a lot of these are. It's not an open data platform so much as it is a series of content managed materials with searchable access to a lot of our data. But underneath a large piece of it, we have a very lightweight implementation of Esri's ArcGIS Online open data piece that we can link pieces to. So that's where we are right now, and we'll be following along behind the rest of our colleagues in very short order. I would like to open up for just a small number of questions before we disappear for lunch. So if anybody want to jump out first, or shall I prime the pump? See, we have at least one in the back.
I was wondering if any of you could briefly go over how you go about choosing which data sets you include in any of these platforms or portals, or you're trying to group many different data sets together.
Does anybody want to start on the question of how you pick what data to include?
Well, as much as we would love to make all data instantly available, like everything else, we have to manage our resources. And so the thing to focus on is the cost benefit. How valuable is that data? How strategic is it for people answering questions in your policy areas? And then how readily available is it? If it's already publicly linked from your website, but it's not as readily found, that's a great one to grab.
And then also, I mean, think about what data you're using most internally. And, you know, for sort of transparency reasons, the data sets you're using primarily internally and making decisions from are the, you know, should be a priority on what you're putting out there for others to be able to check that, those outputs that you're providing.
Yeah, I would agree. Most of the projects that I work on, that prioritization has everything to do with the data quality itself at the metadata level and at the actual data source level. So,
Paul Vase.
Thank you. We've seen a lot of the success in the federal community with data.gov and increased standardization emanating from the presidential executive order for metadata. Would the panel please comment on progress and the likelihood of a state-level executive order for metadata?
I haven't heard anything about a state executive order for metadata, you know, across all departments, but there's definitely going to be an expectation in natural resources that if people have a data set that has strategic benefit, if it's being used for policy development, that it'll be published on the natural resources data platform.
And yeah.
Which requires metadata.
Yeah, which requires metadata. For the metadata standard, we're basing our standard on the Project Open Data standard that's also being used by the feds.
Okay. Another one to maybe two questions. We'll do two more. We'll pick you up last, Jane, and then we'll let everybody go for lunch. Yes.
All right, so I have a data set that I haven't made public yet, but I'm at the end of my project. I've collected some data, and I want the State Water Resources Control Board to continue with this project and give them access to this database, but they're outside CNRA. So how complicated is this going to be? And I keep asking the same question every year.
I'm glad to say it's going to be incredibly easy. The portal or the platform that we're standing up is publicly available. All you have to do is get an account. And one thing I'm glad to say is that the platform is going to be supported operationally by the great enterprise GIS group that we have for natural resources, led by Leo Angriano. And I think he sits about 60 feet from you.
But,
so
but the board is not natural resources. So
I think that was a key piece of the question.
the State Water Resources Control Board is
The
EPA.
ability to do interagency collaboration.
All program areas across the state, state entities, probably depending on the confidentiality of that data. So it does both. It can do both open and it can do a little bit more encapsulated. That's your call. So every state entity will have access to your data if you choose to.
Okay, so to recap that one, we are told that every state agency will be able to have access, and that we will have the ability to assign levels of access to each member of our both active participant as well as viewing communities.
Do you mean access in that folks within CNRA can privately share, or access for those entities to publish?
It's a role-based system. You can set it up so you have internal data providers, external data providers, give them a set of rules of what you want them to follow. So when they upload it, they have to put your required metadata fields in. So it's all role-based. And then basically the access is wide open unless you choose it not to be wide open for a given data set.
If you mark a data set private, it's only shareable within your group or only visible within your organization. And you saw some of those organizations listed on the site up there. But you can do that with whatever partners make sense for you. So for instance, we've got 3 organizations that are participating in proof of concepts with the open data platform. So there's Water, you heard from Matt. They've done some terrific stuff with it. There's Energy Commission and Ocean Protection Council. But we also have Green Info on the site experimenting with it with us too, because we know that there's a lot of other kinds of partners that are going to be of strategic benefit for you all to participate with. And we have a lot of great partners outside of state that we want to be able to pitch in as well, according to your needs, what your business needs are for your collaboration.
It's like, Dan, you've got a response as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, we are proof that we're, as an independent nonprofit, providing data that's often supported but not always supported by CNRA funding. We will be publishing to the platform. So, and they were able to give us publish access. And so I can assume that would be true of other trusted partners.
Okay. Okay, looks like Jane is, we'll have to hold on Jane's question for the moment. So I'm going to turn everybody loose for lunch with the proviso that we are expecting everybody back at 1, and that there's some maintenance going on around at least one of the doors from outside in the lobby, and that as a result, you may have to look for alternative ways in and out of the building in the short term.
They can't hear. I have no idea.